For 5 years my mother-in-law would not let me cook in her kitchen. Not even to make tea. She called me clumsy, careless. Once she said in front of my husband's entire extended family, "Some women just aren't built for a proper kitchen." I smiled. I always smiled. Then one Tuesday afternoon her cardiologist's office called my phone, not her son's, not her daughter's, mine. Because 8 months earlier, quietly, without telling anyone in the family, Margaret had made me her emergency medical contact. The same woman who said I wasn't built for her kitchen had decided I was the only person she trusted with her life. My name is Hannah. I am 31 years old. I married my husband Ethan 6 years ago. His mother Margaret is 68 and has lived alone since his father passed a decade ago. From the very first dinner I had at Margaret's house, I understood my role in her eyes. I was a guest, permanently, never family, never trusted with anything beyond polite conversation. Margaret ran her kitchen the way some people run companies, precise, particular, completely closed to outside input. The first time I offered to help with dishes she said, "Oh sweetheart, you'll just put things in the wrong place." The first time I tried to cook a side dish for Thanksgiving she let me bring it, and then quietly moved it to the far end of the table where almost no one reached it. Once, during a family barbecue, I picked up a knife to help chop vegetables. Margaret actually took it gently from my hand and said, "Let me, dear, this is a real kitchen knife." Ethan would apologize quietly in the car afterward. "She's just particular," he'd say. "It's not really about you." But it always felt like it was about me. For 5 years I brought store-bought desserts to family gatherings because I had simply stopped trying. What I didn't know, what nobody in the family knew, was that Margaret had begun forgetting things almost 2 years before that phone call. Small things at first, misplaced keys, repeated stories within the same conversation. She never told Ethan. She never told her daughter, my sister-in-law Claire, who lived 4 hours away. But one afternoon, about a year into noticing these changes in herself, Margaret called me. Just me, out of nowhere. She asked if I could drive her to a doctor's appointment. She said Ethan was busy with work and she didn't want to bother him. I said of course. I drove her that day and the next appointment and the one after that. She never explained why she kept choosing me. I never asked. I simply showed up every time she called. During those long waiting room hours, something between us slowly changed. She started talking to me, really talking, about her childhood, about missing her late husband, about being afraid of forgetting things and not wanting anyone to know. She still wouldn't let me near her kitchen, but she had quietly let me into something else. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. A nurse from the cardiology department said Margaret had been brought in after an irregular heart episode at home. Stable, but they needed to run further tests and speak with her emergency contact. I said, "I think you may have the wrong number. You should call her son, Ethan." The nurse checked her file and said, "No, the contact on file is you, Hannah, listed 8 months ago." I sat very still in my office chair for a moment. Then I called Ethan, drove straight to the hospital and arrived before he did. Margaret was lying in a hospital bed, smaller than I had ever seen her look. When she saw me, she reached for my hand immediately before reaching for her son, who walked in 2 minutes later. Ethan looked confused when the nurse referred to me as the primary contact. He asked his mother quietly, gently, "Mom, why Hannah?" Margaret looked at me, then at her son, and said something that none of us expected. "Because she shows up, every single time, without being asked twice." Margaret stayed in the hospital for 4 days. On the 3rd day, while Ethan had gone to get coffee, she asked me to sit closer to her bed. She said, "I owe you an explanation, Hannah, maybe an apology too." I told her she didn't owe me anything. She said, "I do. I have spent 5 years treating you like you didn't belong in my family. The truth is, I was afraid." I asked her what she meant. She said my kitchen was the one place I still felt completely capable. As I started forgetting things, small things, scary things, that kitchen became the one space where I still felt like myself. I think some part of me was afraid that if I let you in, I would have to admit how much I was already losing. I didn't know what to say. She continued. "But somewhere in all those car rides to appointments, I stopped being afraid of you seeing me. You never once made me feel small for forgetting things. You just kept showing up." Then she said the words I never expected to hear from her. "When I go home, I want you in that kitchen. I want to teach you my mother's biscuit recipe before I forget it myself." Margaret came home a week later with a diagnosis that explained the memory changes, early stage, manageable with medication and monitoring, but real. The first Sunday after she returned home, she called me into her kitchen. She handed me her mother's worn recipe card for buttermilk biscuits, the one she had guarded for 30 years, the one no one in the family had ever been allowed to even photograph. We made them together that afternoon. My hands clumsy at first, hers patiently guiding mine. Ethan walked in halfway through and stood in the doorway just watching us, not saying anything, looking like he was witnessing something he had stopped believing was possible. Margaret still corrects my technique sometimes. She still has opinions about how finely I chop onions, but now those corrections come with patience instead of dismissal. She is teaching me everything now, not because she has to, but because she finally trusts that I will remember it carefully, the way she taught me to. Some kitchens take 5 years to open their doors, but once they do, they open completely. I used to think Margaret's kitchen was a place I would never be welcome. I didn't understand that for some people, letting someone into their space means admitting they need help, and that admission can take years to arrive at honestly. She didn't choose me as her emergency contact because I was perfect. She chose me because I never stopped showing up, even when she gave me every reason to walk away. Subscribe to Calm Revenge Stories for a brand new story every single day. Because sometimes the people who seem the most closed off are simply the most afraid, and patience, more than anything else, is what finally opens the door.